finally, a source of raw, real, and honest information on healthcare issues that matter most. Welcome to BS Free MD. From the latest medical information to how to stay sane as a doctor or a patient, no subject is taboo, no BS is allowed. Now, let's welcome your hosts, Doctors May and Tim Hindmarsh.
Welcome back to another episode, everyone, of BS Free MD. We're your hosts, Doctors May and Dr. Tim Hindmarsh. And today we have a show that's going to, we hope, blow your mind and maybe even change your life. We are talking about natural health and wellness with the brains behind Naturally Better. It is Dr. Jeremy Ayres and John Gusty. And Dr. Ayres is kind of like the Yoda of holistic healing, apparently, with decades of experience. He's got more wisdom in his little finger than you have in your entire body, Tim. He's passionate about
Must be a lot of wisdom.
Passionate about getting people healthy naturally and has a knack for making even the most complex health concepts easy to understand. John Gusty is the ultimate wellness warrior, and his journey from personal health battles to discovering the transformative power of natural remedies is nothing short of epic. We can't wait for you to hear that story. And together, they've created Naturally Better to help people take control of their health in the most natural and empowering way possible. So whether you're a natural health newbie or a seasoned wellness guru, stick around and hear this fascinating story. All right, welcome Dr. Ayres and John to the show. Thank you for joining us here. And all the way across the pond, Dr. Ayres, for being here.
Well, yeah, thank you very much. And internationally, I'm mostly known as Dr. Jeremy. So please, Dr. Jeremy would be great.
Absolutely.
However, I've got to say, John, oh my God, the Yoda of natural medicine. We've got to take. I mean, I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm taking that, right?
Yeah, that and the more wisdom in your little finger thing. Yeah, my mind was racing with that one. So
yeah,
I'll refrain.
I'm certainly going to love this podcast.
Okay.
Anyway, thanks for having us, eh?
Absolutely.
So let's start.
I'm just trying to think of using the Yoda voice to tell somebody they have chlamydia.
Chlamydia, you have. Not that I can do Yoda.
Yeah, nastiness, I see.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, John, another talent.
thank you. Good night, everybody.
I'll be here all week.
I think this is going down the route of the Doctales with Cocktails
That's
episode.
right. No, it's like I will be at the Holiday Inn, Fort Myers.
Actually, your whole intro could even kick things off because, the Yoda or guru of natural medicine, because the alternative is the guru of unnatural medicine. And actually, that's a really, really big point because, most people listening, I hope, whether they agree with what we're going to say or not, and whatever language is their natural tongue, assume that medicine is in our case, the English language, medicine's a positive thing, that it's going to somehow help them or heal them or nurture them or what have you. And we're at a time now, and it's a very exciting time, where we actually have to define medicine. We have to define what food is over feed, actually. But medicine should nurture, nourish, and help the body, because in truth, only your body can heal. And if anyone has ever said, I cured somebody of this, they're a liar. I've never cured or healed anyone, but I have helped and educated tens of thousands of people to heal themselves. And that's the truth. And the truth is that the body is self-healing and self-protecting. And so, what I teach people is I like to plant seeds. And that is, if a medicine makes a healthy man or woman sick, it can't make a sick man or woman healthy. And if you start from that you could be illiterate and understand that. If you start there, then, we've got a strong foundation to start having a conversation. Because if you jump to the obviously the medicine that a special place in hell is reserved for whoever has prescribed it, chemotherapy, you can't call that a medicine, and we can just scale it down all the way to the perhaps, lesser toxic drugs. And we have to, and I'm sorry if I've sort of started this off, but we have to revert back to Hippocrates. and first do no harm. And if you've got to do harm to heal, and there is a gray area, but if you have to do harm to heal, that you have to have a damn good philosophical reason to harm to reach a healing stage. So sorry if that's not the question you first wanted to start off on, but your intro was so good.
No, that's actually a perfect introduction, really. And let's take it from there. What I want to do is kind of show or focus on both of your sort of backgrounds and then how you connected and got together. So let's start with Dr. Jeremy and just share a little bit, then about your actual training and background and what led you to focus on natural health. And then we'll get into John, your story and how you connected.
Okay, I'll keep it as briefly as possible, but excuse me, I think it's really important that people understand that people like myself and John, but certainly people like me who are actually at the coalface trying to help people get well, we didn't wake up one morning and decide to pick every controversial subject that most people believe is true and do the opposite because it was going to financially advance us or socially improve our status. Quite the opposite. So there is always a story, and usually a very interesting one, behind how we got here and how we became the people we are. And much of that journey has caused us a lot of trouble and adversity. So mine was at 12 years old. Cancer for the first time came into my family. It was my brother's wife's mother with breast cancer, and I was 12 years old, and she went on, as I was told, to die from breast cancer. I now have a different view. It's most likely the treatment, but nonetheless, at 12 years old, I saw the incredible negative, fearful, angry, grieving, horrid effect that quote unquote disease brings into a family. And as a 12-year-old, still quite innocent at the time, I just thought, well, this is wrong. It's got to be fixed. And I didn't think much of it from there on in until I was about 22, 21, when I was an international canoeist representing Great Britain. And I hurt my back very badly. And all through my life, I was, much like churches, actually, I was repelled by religion and going to doctors. Now, actually, I have great faith. So just in case people, I don't want to get me wrong, but there was something about going to a church that I felt very repelled by. I understand it much better now, particularly a Catholic church. But I was also repelled by hospitals and doctor surgeries. I think a lot of people are. And so I was the last one to seek medical help, but I hurt my back very badly. And there was an osteopath, which is pretty much the same as a chiropractor for those who may not know, attached to a squad. And he didn't look like a healthy chap. He looked more like an iconic picture of an English butcher. He was very overweight and red-faced and wore a white coat that a butcher might wear. But he was very cheap, which at the time appealed to me, because he was on the squad. So he said, come along. I could hardly walk. He said, come along to my clinic and let's have a look at you. So I went down there terrified, actually. I didn't know what I was going to expect. And it was a real factory kind of clinic. He had lots of students there and there was no separate rooms. It was all just curtains. And he brought me in, didn't do any explanation. He handed me over to this Eastern European woman that had more facial stubble than me and certainly more muscles and was very intimidating, probably competing in the Olympic Games right now, actually. But anyway, before I knew it, I was stripped to my boxer shorts, no warning, on this couch. And she then proceeded to massage me. Well, it was more torturous, actually. And I was in tears and, partly terrified that I was going to be shown to be crying and partly terrified that I'd get an erection, as any man who's ever had a massage would do, and be asked to roll over, but certainly not with this creature. But anyway, being English, we don't complain. So I was constructing a well-crafted letter in my head that I was going to send the next day. But after she finished torturing me, Ron Johnson came in. Again, no explanation. Put me into what I thought was some pseudo-sexual position. And before I know it, he'd cracked me. And my pain vanished or massively reduced. And it was like a mask had been ripped from my eyes, a veil. And I was like, oh, my God, I have to do this. Now, I was trained as a builder, a carpenter and joiner in a family building. So this was a real curveball. But it was there and then that I knew I had to do this. And again, a very long story short. So I wrote a very flowery letter, because my father read it and said, that's very flowery, to the top osteopathic college at the time in England. And, managed to get an interview, because I didn't have the education for it, managed to get an interview. And I went up there in London and absolutely terrified, absolutely certain I was, in the wrong place, and all these clever looking people waiting to be interviewed to get onto this course. And I sat next to this other chap who was clearly very clever, at least book clever. And he leaned forward to me and said, what do you think of the Royal Review, or whatever it was called at the time, where they were about to review all the different registers in England and try and make one register, which I now know is a death hold on any profession. But anyway, I said, I don't know. I was clever enough to be, I don't know. What do you think? And he told me. Unfortunately, I got called in before him. And the first question they asked me was, what do you think of the Royal Review? And so I repeated everything that this chap had told me, and a few other stories. And looking back, I think they just needed my money. But at the time, I didn't know that. And they gave me a position on the course. So I joined what was supposed to be, the best course in England. And after a year sitting there, bar the anatomy teacher, who was a brilliant pathologist and had worked on some very interesting cases and was fascinating, I was bored out of my brains to my shock. And sitting next to me was a northerner, and I'm from the south, so you've got the sort of south-northerner divide. And he was a very gruff and northern chap, and I didn't know why I liked him, but there was something about him. But he turned around one day and said, "This is crap, isn't it?" And I was so shocked that someone else thought it, because of course I was just thinking it's me and I can't do this, and I'm, I should never have left the family business. Anyway, he said the chap that trained his father, who was a very famous osteopath in the UK at the time, Harry Hawes, who was in his 70s, had restarted a course up north in Durham near the moors, where which are very. Do you remember Hammer House of Horror movies by any chance? Does that mean anything to you?
No.
They were very old. They were all on the moors, and fog and vampires and old buildings and werewolves, and it was all that kind of cliche. This, basically, this chap said, "Come up and see Harry Hawes with me." We went up north onto the moors into a Catholic priest training school that Harry had hired for the weekend. That's that big pictures of choir boys cowering behind, bishops, and which I now understand why they were very, very eerie, from the top college in England. Everything was knackered, the equipment, everything was crap. But I met Harry Hawes, and the minute he started speaking, 76 at the time, I knew I was in the presence of a true healer and genius. Those words he would never accept, but he was. And very, very quickly, he took me under his wing, and he said to me, which is intimidating, but I felt it. He said, "You've got it, lad." Right. And I knew I had it, but I certainly know I've got it now. But he was right. And he took me under his wing and he trained me, and it just rekindled that 12-year-old, we've got to fix this terrible disease. And he was wise beyond, if anyone was Yoda, it was Harry. He was small and, Yoda-like in many ways. And that just all that 12-year-old innocence came back, and it set me off. And as soon as I'd qualified as an osteopath, I was like, right, let's find out how to heal everything. And it led me to my next mentor very quickly, Barbara Wren, who was a genius, still is a genius. And she taught me how to see dis-ease, which is where the word really came from, how to take a case history. And from there on, I've been non-stop researching. And the more you research and the more you find that works, the more it isolates you from profession. I'm sure you don't know what I'm talking about. The more it isolates you from even your own profession, until you end up sort of being right out there on the peripheral doing fantastic work. But what I see now is this beautiful coming back, as more and more even nurses and doctors are starting to reach out to us. So I think we're in the next renaissance of truth at every level, but especially what I call true medicine, not natural medicine. I call it true medicine.
Well, so if you had to wrap up kind of what was so special about Harry, for us and our listeners, that was different from the traditional osteopathic training.
Yes, I called him classical osteopathy, yeah.
So was it more holistic, herbal type of things, or was it a combination of manipulation plus holistic health instead of natural medicine, or instead of Western medicine?
It's really simple, actually, and it's why I like to call it true medicine. And again, he would never accept any of the things I'm saying about him, but they're all true, and anyone who knew him knew it. But it's human medicine. He didn't have patients. I've never had a patient in my life. I've had people. And it is dis-ease. And you can mock it and say, show me the study all you like, right? But of course, we'll get into studies later and the joke that isn't evidence-based medicine, but lots of data manipulation and bad science with a dollar sign instead of the S. But Harry could read and see people. And so even though he's doing classical physical things, it's to open up, basically, at its rawest form, all the great philosophies have been dis-ease is a stagnation. If you go to the old, Greeks, it was the stagnation of the humors or the fluids or the liquids, blood and lymph and cerebral spinal fluid. If you go to the Chinese, it was energy, qi, or the Indians and prana. It was a stagnation, a blockage even. And so all the great philosophies and all the great practitioners of that have been able to look at a human being. Very often they're a human doing, and that's part of the problem, and see the blockages. And they're skillfully able, all the way down to trauma, right? But they're skillfully able to do things and put in place protocols that start to release that. And then the best part of our job is to step back and let the body do what it needs to do. I mean, I've made so many people cry in my career, and I always joke it's usually when I give them the invoice, but I've made so many people cry just by creating the space or doing a technique that unblocks something, and out it comes. And as soon as the tears come, we've begun healing.
Okay. I'm about 85% there. I mean, I think that I don't really want to go back to humors. At the same time, I think the entire premise of allopathic medicine is built on a false premise. This idea that
I agree.
That we can produce chemicals that are better than what your body can figure out to do, which is completely insane. I mean, I think there's elements of allopathic medicine that work really good. I mean, trauma,
of course.
If you get hit by a bus, it's probably, there's probably some stuff that we offer that's helpful. As far as keeping people healthy or treating these, diseases of the 21st century, like type 2, diabetes. And I mean, we create that stuff. I mean, literally the FDA produces the food that makes you diseased and then approves the drugs to treat the problem that they created.
Right.
Because it's a business model. It's a business model. How do you grow the business? You create the clients. So, it's been, since the Flexner report, which is where the death blow was constructed to get rid of other philosophical modes of medicine, it's become rightfully so, because it was set that way, not rightfully, sorry, but understandably so, the most powerful, business and most profitable business on the world. And by the way, Tim, you may or may not heard of Graham Atkinson, the red pill pharmacist, who was a UK advisor, pharmaceutical advisor, and he's actually stepped back now because he's had quite a bit of knocks recently. But we were in the process, or he was mostly with me, sort of guiding him, writing a book called The Baby in the Bathwater, which is, of course, so-called modern medicine, even though it is the youngest medicine in history. Of course, it had a beautiful baby. There was some wonderful stuff. But the bathwater was more like a swimming pool, full of. There's plenty of stuff that needs to be let go, and certainly the doctors and nurses I speak to, we want them to come forward and bring their skills and their knowledge, particularly trauma-based medicine, bleeding, broken bones. However, there's a reason the tribal people who I've spoken with, the Aboriginals, the Maori, the North American Indians, don't want to talk to the so-called white man, and the white man can be of any color skin. But the white man philosophy, because they're not ready for their deeper knowledge. The Amazon, I was going to meet the chief of the Yawanawa in the Amazon that actually do the ayahuasca ceremony properly, and their doctors, which are called pages, they have to go off into the Amazon on their own until the plants speak to them. as because the plants are the medicine. There shouldn't be the food, but certainly the medicine. And in Mexico, where I lived, the Mexicans name the plants and trees for what they give to humanity, so that even the illiterate will understand where they can be used. Right. So that, when we get back to trauma with the Aborigines, and I haven't seen it, but I don't doubt it. They claim they've healed broken bones in one day from playing the didgeridoo at the correct tone. And certainly the Chinese are doing very great, probably the Russians, great tonal work. And you may have seen some of that. Greg Barden, I think it is, was the one who brought it forward with the tumor being released. So if we had the best of modern medicine trauma, for example, with the right lighting, i.e. the circadian rhythms, with the right tones and with the right atmosphere, I think we'd improve trauma care exponentially.
Fascinating.
Well, yeah, and that harkens to a lot of the Jack Cruz stuff with,
Correct.
light and, time of day and the right frequencies of light and the methylene blue infusions he's given to his neurosurgical patients, and how much it's this, that stuff is just, all of this.
And the knowledge of the moon, you shouldn't be operating on a full moon. Because if you ask any surgeon, they do the same procedure over and over and over again, and they'll tell you there's certain procedures that they've done 1,000 times that go wrong, or they bleed more, or the wound doesn't heal, and it's to do with the moon. And if people go, "All right, I'm out of here now," right? Everybody knows the moon affects women, particularly. Women are meant to be. The word menstrual cycle is mens from Greek. Mens means moon. It's actually moonstrual cycle. It's driven by a 28, 29-day moon cycle. And when you bring this old knowledge back, now I've got a book here, it's over there right now. It's 400 years old European knowledge. When you start to apply that back with the amazing breakthroughs and skills that we've made, you will get better outcomes. That's what we're meant to be, right? We're meant to be getting rid of you in the nicest possible way, so you don't need us.
Exactly.
Yes.
That is exactly. It's so funny because, I work in allopathic medicine. I'm an urgent care doctor still. And some days somewhat grudgingly, but I do some stuff that's helpful.
Of course you do.
Some stuff that's, probably,
your heart's good.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because the demands of the patient are, I have a cold, you have to do something. I'm going on a cruise. You don't understand. I can't be sick. And I sat there and what I'm thinking is, that's a spiritual problem. Take that up with God, the maker of the universe, because I don't have anything for you. But then they leave pissed off if they don't get, azithromycin for a virus. And I'm like,
and then you get a negative score.
Well, then you get a negative score, and then
how you get paid.
The bullshit grinder just continues to turn.
Yeah, you're trapped in a system that was designed to make sure you aren't able to become the truest doctors that you were called to be, as far as I can see it anyway.
So, Jeremy, have you had your own practice over the years? Are you in a little group of like-minded people, or you're independent?
Yeah, no, I'm independent. I had my own clinics, but then because I'm doing the membership with John, and also publishing and looking to publish other people's work with John, I've moved to just Zoom consultations, and we run a membership site, and actually better for you, spelled anyway.com will get you there. Yeah, where I teach everything I've learned in 30 years, and I've formed a protocol that has worked. It's just the best of everything I know. Now, of course, there's nuances for people, and and I was worried doing a membership site whether I was going to unleash a mental asylum, because I know it's also going to be a lot of trauma release and people breaking out in all kinds of skin things as the body release. But it hasn't been that way. It has been mostly the most amazing group healing where they can't afford or can't, see me one-to-one with my protocol packages online via Zoom. So, but it's a beautiful thing, and it's growing very nicely.
Well, I want to kind of wind around and get to how you form naturally better. John, let's hear your story and how you fit into all of this. So,
well, in full disclosure, my story does not include any mustached Olympic hairy man girl excuses, but I'll try to make it interesting nonetheless. Now, I've always been, from probably from birth, I've always been kind of an indie driven kind of a person. Got into music early on, and right away, it's like I was able to make the distinction that I was drawn towards the independent stuff. That's where what I considered to be, that's where all the good stuff was. All the mainstream stuff was just kind of watered down garbage. And it's always kind of been who I've been with everything. It's like when I go out to eat, I don't want to eat at a mainstream chain restaurant. I'd rather find a good independently owned restaurant. And so I really look for the artisan, the craft and things, all things. And so, lifetime in the music business, relatively healthy person, didn't hardly ever, in fact, never interacted with the medical industrial complex growing up. So I had no perspective, no history with the medical industrial complex. Flash forward, I am in my late 20s, early 30s, and I meet my wife, Dawn, also in the music industry. And at the time, Dawn was just freshly diagnosed with what she was told was multiple sclerosis. She was walking with a cane at the time that I met her. And we quickly became a couple. And I am kind of a dig in to it kind of a person. And so her problems and her struggles became my problems and my struggles, and started going with her to her medical appointments. And I quickly realized, and it was probably because of the way that I was wired naturally. Well, two things. I quickly realized two things. One, my wife has many talents, but she is not the best asker of questions. She's very trusting. And so she would get told something and she would just nod her head and go, yes, yes, yes. And so I would sit there and go, well, wait a minute, why should she take this? Or what is this thing going to do if she does? And so I was asking the questions, and I quickly realized that in mass, the medical industrial complex and the people that work inside of it in mass don't like questions. I was met with a whole bunch of attitude and ego, which, coming from the entertainment industry, I understand attitude and ego. And it struck me differently, because this attitude and this ego was tied to people's health and wellness, and in some cases their very lives. And so I got very, very passionate about the options that my wife had. And I quickly realized that the medical industrial complex, if I could make an analogy, turning to the medical industrial complex to solve your health and wellness issues would be like turning to the fast food industry to solve your nutrition issues. You could make the argument that the fast food industry is definitely in the food business, but I think we would all agree that the fast food industry's number one goal is not your health and wellness. Their goal is to be profitable. And I think that comparing the current medical industrial complex, the hospitals, the doctors, no offense, Tim, with what you do all day, you're one of the good ones. I'm not talking about the people in it, I'm talking about the structure. But I think the entire structure of the medical industrial complex is comparable to the fast food industry. And so
I think it's worse.
Because I
think it's worse. I think you're curing a morning headache with Jack Daniels. Because like everybody knows McDonald's should be a treat, even if they eat it as a staple. You would have to be incredibly ill-informed to not know that it's junk food. I mean, we've been calling it junk food for decades.
Well, and at this point, it's 2024. Who doesn't know that junk food has zero nutritional? I mean, it literally shouldn't even be a treat at this point. It should be, we should look at fast food the same way that we look at anything else that people might want to turn their nose up at, whether it's adult bookstores or any. We should look at fast food like that and go, look, that's just something I don't take part in. But far too many of us turn to those options. And like I said, I just noticed that that the medical industrial complex was like going to the fast food industry for nutrition advice and direction. And so when I started on behalf of my wife looking for more independent options and sources, that's where Jeremy and I crossed paths. And it's been what he and I have created with Naturally Better has been a labor of love, because neither one of us, we come from very different worlds and we're doing things for very different reasons, but neither one of us are profit driven. Like it is important to me to carry on and further the art of conversation. It's very, very important to me. I think the art of conversation is I think we could make the argument is very close to being lost. So these type of things that we're doing right now are very, very important. And I just, we're not doing this to hawk, supplements and stuff like that. We're doing this to share knowledge, because the sharing of knowledge just helps us all learn our way forward. And if we can learn our way forward in all aspects of life, we can hopefully reach that nice balance and not be in dis-ease. And we can, we can truly enjoy health and wellness, which I think Jeremy and I think probably all four of us agree, health and wellness goes well beyond food and medicine. I mean, health and wellness is everything. It sounds so cheesy, but it is. It's mind, body, and spirit. It's light, it's air, it's water, it's what we put on us, it's what we put in us. It's everything, and there has to be a good balance. And in order to get that balance, we need information, and that's what Jeremy and I enjoy doing the most, is just sharing information.
Okay, so I know I'm thinking it, and I know the listeners will, but still, in this world, so you're living in the US, and in this world of, there's, I've seen naturopaths over the years. Tim has, there's all kinds of people doing more alternative medicine in the United States, osteopathy, natural.
Even though osteopaths in the United States, for the most part, are just allopathic physicians.
It depends. But anyway, how did you get to Dr. Jeremy, and what was it that clicked with him that you found that was helpful? I'm assuming for your wife, for Dawn, that worked. Can you share with us, what was it that got you across the pond, and what happened?
Right. So, again, in full disclosure, we in modern life tend to love our team sports. Everything is team sports, here, whether it's politics, whether it's religion. And I've never really been a team sports type of guy. I'm not political, and I'm not religious, although I am deeply spiritual. I'm not religious. I am not political. I am an anarchist. Just for those of you that are not fully familiar with that word and only know the version of that word that gets pushed on cable news, anarchists are simply just people who follow two rules. And those two rules are no masters, no slaves. And I hope that we could all agree to that one, because if you disagree with that one, you're into slavery. Congratulations. So no masters, no slaves. And anarchists follow the non-aggression principle, which is there is the only time it is ever suitable to be physically aggressive towards another human being is if you're defending the life of yourself or someone else. No. So the anarchist community was very, very appealing to me. And every February, there is a wonderful gathering called Anarchapulco, and it happens in Acapulco, Mexico. And I was in Acapulco for the Anarchapulco conference. I think it was 2017, maybe 2016, 2017. And there were a couple of speakers there that really resonated with me. And one of them, I just jotted his name down, found a couple of his videos online, finished out the conference, came back home to Tennessee, played it for my wife. And I said, hey, I want you to listen to this guy and listen to what he says. And so she was watching this video, and you know how on YouTube or whatever platform you use, there's the suggested videos that will come up while you're watching something else. Mm-hmm. My wife was attracted to one of the suggested videos think she said something about the gentleman having nicer hair than the gentleman I had suggested that she watch. And she clicked on the suggested one, and that just happened to be this chap named Jeremy Ayres. And so she came back to me and she said, "Hey, the guy you gave me was great, but I like this guy better." And the rest is history. Jeremy, we sought him out, and we joke around a lot with each other. But I will tell you this: Jeremy is the we've been through a lot together over the years, but he is the one human being other than myself and my wife's father who has never taken his eye off the ball as far as getting her better. And I should note that early on, when Jeremy and I first were interacting with each other, it was a professional relationship. I was paying him. At some point, I just stopped paying him, and he just kept.
Typical bloody Americans.
Yeah. I knew that was coming, but I kind of teed that up for you. But no, in all seriousness, I haven't given Jeremy a penny in years, but he has never stopped caring for my wife, and so we just became dear friends, and we both love projects, and so we work on projects all the time together. And one of those projects, the ongoing projects, is my wife. But Jeremy and I, we've wrote books together, we've done documentaries together, we've written things together, we've created things together, and we're going to keep doing that, because like I said, the reason we're doing it is to share information, and this is the type of information that it feels good to share. I mean, we could get going on any number of topics, and we're all going to learn something from each other. And even if it's something as simple as like how to make soap or whatever, you learn these skills, and now you're that much more self-sufficient. And I think that's what we're all kind of striving for, is to be as self-sufficient as possible in as many areas of our life as possible.
Well, some of us are. I just saw Matt Taibbi had an article yesterday. Of course, I couldn't read the original article because it was paywalled from the New York Times. But there's this op-ed about this woman, and she talks about how a bat flew into her house, and she had to call the sheriff's department, the CDC, the local health department, because she just didn't know what to do, because maybe a bat flying through her house was going to give her some sort of disease. And I'm like, we had a bat in our house, and I hit it with a badminton racket, and I threw it outside. It's just like, it's simple. It flew away. Yippee!
But you see, her default was to offload the responsibility of that bat to a third party, and so many of us do that. Not what I'm saying, but
that's exactly the point. Is that obviously this is somebody from a political perspective is like the ultra liberal, and it's like the system worked exactly. Literally, she put in this article, the system worked exactly the way it's supposed to work. But Donald Trump doesn't like 3-letter agencies like the CDC, and I'm like, you are so fucking insane. A bat flying into your house is somehow Donald Trump's fault. Like, that's a religion. That's not even anything other than like some kind of cult. And so you sit there and you go, second of all, do you understand in any kind of emergency, you will be the first to die because you can't do anything for yourself. And so part of what we found because we're going fairly deep into this medical freedom movement, is you can't save everybody. Like, part of preaching this gospel is you're trying to find people that actually give a crap about dealing with their own lives and owning their own health. And unfortunately, most people want to offload that. Yeah. So part of the this gospel is number one, you got to own your health, because you only get one body, and this is your chance to like make it or break it. And then B, here's what you need to do. And that's what just blows my mind.
Yeah. I used to have, and this is absolutely going to ruffle some feathers. So, no apologies in advance, but I used to be very, very tolerant of different religions and different mindsets until 2020 happened. And when 2020 happened, I saw statists, and for those of you out there that don't understand that word, and I'm not trying to be arrogant, but a lot of people, I say that word and a lot of people go, what do you mean by statist? Statist, those people who worship the state, those people, at least here in the States, they look to the District of Columbia as a higher power, a higher authority. They really honestly believe that these people write these magic words down on their magic paper, and that somehow gives them magic power over them, their followers. And where I say I used to have a lot of tolerance and patience with religion up until 2020. Why I say that is, during 2020 and forward, I've never seen a group of people treat each other and others as poorly as I've seen statists treat each other and others. And something that statists do that other religions don't is, if you talk to a Buddhist understands that not everybody's Buddhist. If you talk to someone who is Jewish, they understand that not everyone is Jewish. But statists, and by statist, again, I mean Republicans and Democrats, they feel that everyone is one of them, or should be. And it is so insulting to be treated that way. And the events of 2020 and the way that I saw statists treating each other, it was horrifying to see. And just with my own eyes, and at least from where I was here in Middle Tennessee, about a third of the population was taking all of that stuff hook, line, and sinker. And if they would have looked on their screens, if they'd have had their little fondle slab in their hand, and that little screen told them to stick a fork in their eye, a third of the people would have done it. Mm-hmm. And so I just think, I had a very wise person years ago to give me this little bit of this nugget of wisdom, and they said, they just called it the power of thirds. They said, you can have 100 people, you can have 1,000 people, and you can say, you can do anything. You say, eat this cookie. A third of the people are going to eat that cookie, no questions asked. Another third of the people aren't going to eat it, no matter what you could bribe them. They're still not going to eat it. But then there's going to be that middle third that could go either way. They might want it, they might not want it. And I really think that if thinking about life that way has helped me not be as frustrated and angry as maybe some of my friends and neighbors get with the events going on around them. There's a third of the people that you're just never going to reach. Like you say, Tim, you can't save everybody. There's a third of the people that will literally stay in the house as it's burning and die in the fire because they're going to go down with the ship or whatever. You can't save everybody. You can't save that one third. You don't need to save that other third because they're already with you. It's that middle third that we have some hope with, and we try to, those are the people that I think, Jeremy and I are trying to reach and say, hey, look, you have other options. You just don't have to take these commercial, corporate, statist options. There are, Jeremy mentioned a couple of times earlier about ancient wisdom and old knowledge, and it's old ancient wisdom for a reason. I mean, look at traditional Chinese medicine. Look at how many, we can argue about timelines and all, and that's a whole other podcast in and of itself. But I think we can all say, like, look at, you take something like TCM, traditional Chinese medicine. At least we can at least confirm that it's been around hundreds of years, possibly even thousands of years. But it bears the test of time because it's solid information, and it's information that if you know it, you can apply it, and you can be that much more knowledgeable and that much more healthy.
Well, I always say you ignore ancient wisdom at your own peril, because if it was ancient wisdom, ancient bullshit, we wouldn't know it because no one would be using it anymore. Yeah. So I want to know what happened to Dawn and how she's doing.
Well, okay. So we would need another 2-3 hours to fully peel back the onion that is my wife. But I don't think, and again, I want to be respectful of the topic, but I think we could talk for a long time on the topic of diagnosis. I don't think my wife has multiple sclerosis because I don't think multiple sclerosis is in and of itself a thing. I think it's a condition. It's some words that were made up, and it gets thrown around. I think I've watched far too many people be diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and Lyme's is the other one. These are very vague buckets that people get thrown into, and so my wife, when we stopped thinking about her issue as just multiple sclerosis and we started looking at it as multiple layers of things wrong with her, that's when we really started making some progress in certain areas. Now, can my wife walk right now? No, but she is. There are aspects of her biology that are just astounding. She had some. Jeremy was actually just in the States a couple months ago and did some work on her that caused you know how after you get a massage or whatever, you dislodge toxins and toxins move around, and it's not uncommon to get sick after a massage. Well, that actually happened to my wife, not because of massage, but because of some of the physical therapy Jeremy was doing with her. She actually, her body started pushing out toxins through the bottoms of her feet. And she got these massive wounds on the bottom of her feet from all the toxins exiting her body. And so we've been going to a wound care clinic the last 2 months weekly. And the girls there at the staff at the wound care clinic are surprised at one, how fast my wife's skin healed, and two, like the strength of her bones. So I think once we got her off of all of the pharmaceuticals, because it was stunning the number of prescriptions that were written for her, I used to save them. We had a stack of just prescriptions we never cashed in. But once we got her off of all pharmaceuticals and Jeremy really started working with her, we stabilized some things, such as like her energy levels are way more consistent than they used to be. She sleeps more consistently than she used to be. So we're looking at her issue as a multi-layered issue, not just one thing. And like I said, I know I kind of opened up a can of worms there with that whole diagnosis thing, but I personally don't think that multiple sclerosis in and of itself is a thing. I think it's a term that gets thrown around when they don't really know, when the medical professionals don't know what else to do. So they throw you in that box.
Yeah, I would agree that there's a lot of those things, like you said, Lyme, fibromyalgia, even some of the autoimmune conditions. Myself, I was diagnosed with, well, some people say lupus. Oh, it's lupus. Oh, it's mixed connective tissue. Oh, we're not sure. It's polycon. It's like, well, we don't really know. It's just bucket of whatever. And I think that's the same with the neurologic conditions as well. And that there's way more to it than we know. And you're right. The pharmaceuticals and the Western medicine seems to be poisoning people more than it really helps them.
Well, may I add to Dawn's?
Yes,
please.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, Tim. I didn't want to. Did you want to say something, Tim?
No, I was just going to say, when I was on the pharmacy and therapeutics committee for our insurance companies, the number one most amount of money we spent on any pharmaceuticals were MS drugs. Believe it or not, because these drugs were narrowed down to these little tiny niches, and then they were used off label. And so they used the orphan drug law in the United States to have no competition for producing these, and they could charge vastly inflated prices. And then we had to cover them because they were mandated under the 6 protected classes by Medicare. So it was just government scratches the back of the industry scratches, and it just goes around and around. And like,
it's a business.
Yeah. And you sit there and you go, how can you spend that much money on a diagnosis that is so tiny compared to, everything else we do?
So yeah, well, as it really is a business model, and with good people trapped in it, and a lot of them don't realize they're in a business model, but when they do, and that's what Naturally Better is really about, is we want, the true essence of what America is supposed to be, which is the freedom to talk about anything and even have the right to be wrong. He may turn out to be wrong, but the freedom to discuss it and explore it and have private contracts. What I mean by that, you want to see me as a doctor, we'll do that. We're private, we're protected, and we're human, but I want to go back to Dawn. The reason we stopped, or John stopped paying me, is not because he's a tight ass, which is one of the things we use in England. He's one of the most generous men I've ever met, actually, as is Dawn, his wife, are very generous people in both spirit and other ways. It's because in this case, and every case is unique. I've got anyone who knows me, a very, very high success rate, particularly with complex dis-ease pictures of helping people to get well. But Dawn's was obvious that it was not going to be one of those cases. And so I said to them both, and all right, we were becoming friendly, even friends, but I said to them, look, I want to give you an agreement. I will not yield on looking to what's causing this, because I foundationally, philosophically believe there are causes, usually plural, to disease. I will continue on the understanding that we may find it and you get better, and we produce the new Dawn protocol, and everyone benefits. B, you don't get better and you stay where you are, but we will learn something and others will benefit. And C, which no one wants, we don't help you, you deteriorate, you pass, we'll still learn something that someone else will benefit from. Do you accept those terms? And both of them obviously it's got to come from Dawn, unanimously said yes. And so that's why we stopped. It became Project New Dawn. And we've learned a lot, right? And I want to give an example of not giving up on people, even though Dawn has deteriorated. I know John doesn't want to say it because it might make me look bad, right? But take someone else that I've worked with for just over a year. And normally I only work with people that are really unwell for a year because we get the results we want. But one chap who had, I won't say the C word, but very severe prostate issues, came to me, and we took his case history and all the levels of causation I felt I'd found, and we started doing things. He also had some allopathic treatment as well, but the prostate problem went away. He's 70, by the way, and a musician, but he'd been a lawyer most of his life. He was thriving in many ways, except that his body decided to use his skin to release whatever toxicity. My main mantra, or one of them, is you're not sick, you're toxic, tox-sick. And your body doesn't know how to work against you. And so I was quite confident that his body was using his skin, which in Chinese medicine is the largest organ of excretion, even in Western medicine, to be honest. But it went on for months. And I said, this is unusual, and I'm always willing. And I think that's quite important. You have to be willing to be wrong. Maybe I've made a mistake. Maybe even the philosophy is wrong. But every time I was consulting with him once a month, this went on over a year. And although he said he felt great, his skin got worse and worse, is how others would describe it. But I would use more and more active. And every time I said, have we missed anything? No. I've told you everything. Anyway, 14, 15 months later, he suddenly wrote to me, I think I might have found what I missed. And it turns out he'd been, since a boy, 6 years old, his mother had given him a handful of raisins every day. And we'd worked out he'd eaten over 0.5 metric ton of raisins. Now, if you go and Google the Dirty Dozen, which is the most sprayed fruits and vegetables in the world currently, I think raisins is number 1. And so he stopped taking them, and within 8 weeks, his skin cleared up.
Wow.
And it's probably at the root of everything else. And so I take that case because even, I've done this over 30 years, and certainly last 15 years, I've really earned my stripes and solid on the foundation that I've worked with. I was like, well, what have we missed? Or maybe, I was starting to have because I'm human, wobbles, and that's healthy. But we found it. And with Dawn, John and I, and even Dawn, I think we're quite confident we know, but we will keep going, and maybe there's one other piece, maybe there's several other pieces, but I know this because I've done it enough times. When you find, I'll tell you one more story if you don't mind.
Oh yeah,
because it's interesting.
We definitely want the stories.
All right, can I give you a story as an example?
Yes.
I had two women, two sisters, American, that came to me, and they were diagnosed with black mold, and their health was ruined, their marriages were ruined, their lives were ruined. They were paranoid about going anywhere, of being, they burnt everything they'd own. And I mean, they were in, as worst case of trauma you can imagine, because you can't see this black mold. I mean, of course you can find it. Someone's behind a bath panel, but basically they're terrified. And I took the case history and, I had said to them at the time, isn't it interesting that no one else in your house got the black mold, but you did? There must be some other factor. And anyway, because there was black mold in their blood, right? So anyway, we started a protocol, and they weren't really progressing. They were improving, but not to the level I usually expect to see. And so I'm open to being wrong. And so I said, look, can we go back and do the case history again and just see? And we got to the bit about any surgeries where they'd said no. And then they said, is cosmetic surgery? I know it sounds stupid, right? I know it sounds stupid, but it isn't stupid. Human beings, language is very good, but, and anyway, they said, what about breast implants? We've had breast implants. I said, oh my God, absolutely. And whether you're listening or not, all breast implants are ticking time bombs, in my opinion. Anyway, it turns out they were on their second set of breast implants. They'd had the first one taken out, and when they took it out, it was all covered in black mold because the environment, the body was trying to attack it and knew it wasn't of it. And that is a perfect environment for mold. And it turns out that there is a bigger growth in taking breast implants out than putting them in America. And so I suggested that the second set is probably just as moldy and probably the main reason. And so they didn't want to take them out because they'd have flat chests. I said, but you'll have a life. In fact, I believe they did go on to take them out, and their health did improve because they wrote to me. One of them wrote to me some years ago. But do you see, there is the way I look at things, if people don't start to get better or they appear to get worse, which is usually more active, the body's starting to shift things and what have you. And I've got plenty more stories if you want examples of that. But if they absolutely aren't, and Dawn hasn't been, then we've missed something or some things. And that's why Dawn and John agreed to working the way we are. And because of that, we've become very great friends. And because of that, John and I, who are particularly connected, have started Naturally Better. And we want to we're talking to you wonderful people. We just want conversations, and we want, yes, we have a membership site. Yes, you have to pay $18 a month because we find when you pay for something, you actually do it. And when you don't, although I've given stuff for free, but when you don't pay for it, they don't do it. It's something goes off. But what we want to grow is collaborations, cooperations, and getting, the great ancient wisdom of old came from people collaborating with a spirit of what works, not what sells. And that's what, of course, we're going to make money when it works, right? But when this kind of knowledge reestablishes itself, the great surgeons can come in and adapt. And like we were talking earlier, we can do the best work of our lives. And that pumps my nads.
I will be using that statement for the rest of my life.
That's why I love my people. We have the best names.
No, but that's exactly it. I mean, I look at all of this. First of all, I've said this, I don't know how many times on our podcast, because we've changed our views on things, back and forth, especially since COVID. But, it's fascinating because I said, I reserve the right to be wrong. Like, you have to have that attitude or else you can never move forward because you're going to get stuff wrong. And, what we saw, especially from the World Health Organization and from Fauci over the last 4 years was a doubling, a tripling, a quadrupling down when they were clearly wrong. I mean, I just spoke at an event with Del Bigtree a week ago, and it was fascinating because he brought out this video of all of them saying about how the vaccine would stop transmission. This is like a 5-minute video of just every single pundit, Fauci, Borla, all saying it would stop transmission. When anyone with basic virology knows that if you give a shot in the arm, it's not going to stop transmission of a respiratory virus because it grows in your freaking nose. I mean, it's real simple. They knew that, and they continued lying because they had to have this veneer of being this godlike deity that was never wrong. And so the humility to be able to get things wrong is what allows you to progress. It just is amazing.
And your core intentions. We're not. I mean, money's great. We want money. I'm still, quite a few dollars shy of being wealthy, right? But that's not what pumps our nads. That's not what, as a 12-year-old boy, I didn't go, fuck, I could make money if I solve these problems. That was never, and it has remained never, what gets me up to do. I mean, the amount of research and reading over 30 years would be intimidating to people to find those golden nuggets. And that's what Harry Hawes taught me. So there's golden nuggets. I've read books from atheists and religious, and it's quite difficult reading some of that, but you find golden nuggets. But the intent was always it's a gift. Give it back. It's only a gift when you give it, right? And so, and when you see people heal, and the whole process of healing is actually, they usually become a much more authentic version of themselves than they were, and you then see what they go and do with that. That's the beauty of it. That's the wealth.
So can you tell us more about Naturally Better, how it works? You said that there's a membership. I know you have products online. Is it a route for people to get to you and have a consult, or is it more about empowering patients to learn, or a group? Like, how does it work?
Well, Jeremy, let me, if you don't mind, because I would definitely want to get this in because I think there are people out there that can benefit greatly from this. So first, let me say this is not a sales pitch. This is a sharing of knowledge. But if you go to naturallybetterforyou.com and we set it up however you want to, Jeremy likes the letter 4 and the number U, kind of like how Prince would do it. I prefer the 4. You can spell it. Anyways, you get that domain anyway you spell it. We got it. When you get there, it's a sampling of a little bit of everything that we do. But the kind of the shining jewel is Jeremy's got a protocol. And we, for your audience, if anybody out there listening to this, it wants to take us up on this, go to naturallybetterforyou.com, and that protocol is there, and it's a 90-day protocol, but I mean it's knowledge that you'll have for the rest of your life. It's only $45, which is, the average family spends more than that on pizza, one night after a baseball game or something like that. But for $45 one time, you get an awful lot of information. But the greatest thing is, and this is what I kind of enjoy the most, is there is a private membership, which is that's included in that, and you can continue the membership if you want. But that membership, there's people all over the world that are in there at all times. And I don't know about you, but like whenever I'm trying to solve a problem, whether it's like, I don't know, fixing a toilet or whatever, you go to YouTube and you look up that problem. I find you can learn more in the comment section because you've got people in the comment section participating and giving their take on whatever the advice is. And that's kind of what our membership is like, is you could have an issue and you go into our private membership and you ask about that issue. You don't even have to ask Jeremy directly. There's any number of people in there that will give you answers and solutions and things to try. That's what it's all about. Again, it's about sharing information. So you've got Jeremy's protocol, you've got the private membership. There are Jeremy does an amazing blog series, comes out every 2 weeks or so. That is just each episode dives deep into whatever the topic of the day is, and then the final thing is, and I think this is also valuable too here, is every 2 weeks there's a Q&A session where anyone and everyone, if you're a member, can jump on, and you've got access to Jeremy and anybody else that's on there too. And you can just, Jeremy's kind of very gracious with that. He'll stay on as long as people got questions. And I mean, it's when you look at the money, and again, I hate that this is ever about money, and for us it's not. But when you look at the money people spend on, just look at what they spend on their phones, or look at what people spend on video games, or even look at what people spend dining out. $45 one time to gain knowledge and to get into some better habits and to just be overall healthy and have access to people worldwide 24/7 it's a really, really small investment in a really, really great asset, which is your body.
Well, if you really want to screw me over, just go and join the membership and binge watch all the vlogs, which we do walking in the Lake District, which is the most beautiful part of England. And my professional I work is Graham Norbury, or Norbs. He's a Jack Cruise expert. So we discuss things in depth over 30-minute vlogs. And there's about 60 of them. Go binge watch them and then get your money back before the 30 days up. And then, if you want to screw me over, there you go. But you get all the knowledge and then get out of there, right? However, the reason I chose a 90-day challenge is because in the experience of working one-to-one, there's a lot of unlearning that has to happen. A lot of the stuff is like really challenge, like really, that's not what I under. So you've got to go through this process and then you start the protocol. Not everyone starts immediately, and usually within 90 days very, very significant positive things have begun to happen in their body and they can't deny it, right? And then also past the 90-day, if they go past that, they usually I've said we're not the Catholic Church, so normally everybody jumps off the wagon, right? And they go and have a pizza or whatever they go and do, right? And their body immediately speaks way louder than before. That what are you doing, bitch? And it's whereas before they might have been eating pizzas their whole life, for example. I just picked pizza out of the blue, right?
Yeah, right.
Modern grains. But if they've taken grains out for even a week and then go and have commercial grains, I guarantee you their stomach's going to blow up like a balloon and hurt. And then at least they can't go forward and go, you know what? I've got a genetic disease or grain. They know there's something causing it. So I could be lying. I could be wrong. I could be very artful at marketing and things, but they can't deny that they took something out and then put it back in, and they felt very different. And so we've got, all these members from all over the world at different stages of doing that and differing disease labels, or many times not. And they're able to go, well, they've been through it or they're starting it. And it's just, what? As I said, I thought I was going to open up a mental asylum. And I was very reluctant to do a membership site and teach what I do, because I normally do one-to-ones that I can control it. But with a few exceptions, because it's people, we've had nothing but this fantastic outcomes and fantastic community, and they're bonding and they're helping each other. And so it's a beautiful thing. Thank God. Otherwise, I'd be bald and swigging some, vodka while I was talking to you.
No, but you're right about what you said about the mental asylum, is that you open it up to the world and for people to come in, and you lose control in a way, and B, you don't know what is gonna happen.
I'm sure you've seen it as doctors, but there's so much trauma. I've taken tens of thousands of case histories, and sadly, the amount of normal trauma that's hidden through families and relationships, especially through COVID era, there's a escalation of abuse, and from normal people there's so much trauma when it gets trapped in the physical body, and so when you start doing these protocols, it starts to come out.
The problem is that we've taken trauma, we've given it a medical name so we can bill for it, and then we give people medications to numb the trauma, when that's not how you fix trauma. You don't 100%. It's like we have an epidemic of people hitting themselves on the head with a hammer, and we've become helmet salesmen. Yeah. And then the federal government's like, we need to spend more money on helmets. We have a helmet crisis. No, you have a people hitting themselves on the head with a hammer crisis. Take the freaking hammer out of their hand. That's a lot simpler.
I like the helmet analogy. I've often said, if mechanics acted the way that doctors do, then they'd never fix your car. They'd only give you rental cars. So you'd never get your car fixed. You'd just be driving a rental car for the rest of it, because that's kind of what the medical industrial complex does. Is, like you say, it doesn't stop the hammer from coming down on the head. It puts a helmet on so that the helmet, the blow's just numbed a little bit, but the blow's still there. And to the ultimate point, you have to fix. You can't numb things. You can't put Band-Aids on things. You have to fix the problem.
Can I share one story with you?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I lived in Barbados for a few years. It was terrible. You don't need to feel sorry for me, but somehow we pushed through and survived Barbados and the beaches and the weather. But it was tough, but we got through. But I had a clinic there, and I treated this whole lovely Bayesian family over a few years, and they brought me their mother, who was in their 80s, and she was a Bayesian preacher, so the full sort of singing and all that good stuff, right? But she was very ill and had a very nasty named thing in her left lung, and they brought her to me, and I knew a lot of the family's story, so I knew, and she was like a zombie when she walked in, just no life in her, and certainly not this effervescent preacher woman that she was. And I knew she'd lost 2 adult children. One adult son was shot dead, and the other one was a daughter who had brain tumors and submitted to modern medicine, and over 5 years was just horrifically deteriorated and died. And it was the left lung, and in Chinese medicine, left is female, right is male. So we always look, is there any correlation there? And certainly there was. And so I felt very much it was grief. The lungs are also grief, a lot to do with grief in Chinese medicine. So I just had her on my couch. I put her on a protocol and a couple of very good products that I found work very well. And the family would come in, and I, as you've noticed, I have very bad English humor, and I would just use very bad English humor and sort of, treat her almost as she wasn't there. And, and after about 6 or 7 weeks with my hands on her, and anyone who works with their hands will know this, you get a sense of something. And I knew there was an opening, shall we say, and I pushed, and she burst out crying, proper grief crying. I mean, I think, grief crying, wailing. And she cried for about 15 minutes, just wailing and wailing and wailing, and then walked out. And then within 3 to 4 weeks, the named thing on her lung disappeared. And she went back to preaching, and she lived another 2 years until she passed peacefully. And she went back to full, and you won't find that on any scan, that you have to. This is what, back to Harry Hawes and all that great wisdom, and anyone that works with people, and they can be difficult, but we need to create an environment where 2 humans can come together with an intent to see what's going on. And even if we fail, we must look to relieve that suffering with protocols and medicine and techniques that first do no harm. And again, when we do harm, and there is a gray area, I accept that sometimes surgeries and things like that, and let's call it what they are, right? They're controlled trauma to the body. It's trauma to the body. But there's certainly areas where that is necessary to buy more time for longer, deeper healing and processes to be applied. And so it's a beautiful thing when it comes together.
Well, there is. And it's, it's fascinating because I think of where I was 25 years ago, and I wanted to, patients would come in and they'd say, I want something natural. And I wanted to get the Death is Natural t-shirt because it just drove me crazy. Like I just heard the word nat, and I'm like, what do you mean? Like you're sick. You don't need something natural. You need like antibiotics or whatever. And to kind of see this evolution where, I still believe, the stuff that we do really well in Western medicine, we do really well. The problem is
beautiful baby. The stuff that's good is beautiful.
Yeah. But the problem is people assume because you can treat appendicitis or you can do a C-section on somebody with obstructive labor and save the mother and baby, which didn't happen 150 years ago, that therefore everything that we do in Western medicine is good. And it's so much of it is useless and harmful and wildly expensive, which I was giving CME talks several years ago, and my colleagues, most of them thought I was insane. I said, look, basically everything we do in allopathic medicine stopped in 1960. Anything of any value, anesthesia, safe surgeries, antibiotics, all that stuff, everything else we've done has moved the needle hardly at all and is super expensive and doesn't do much and is probably harmful. And one of the psychiatrists came up to me and he said, you know what, you're right. Because I have more psychiatric medications to give my patients now than I did 25 years ago when I started practice, and I'm seeing the same patients every week. If it worked, I would have no patients. And I was like, duh.
Yeah, and that should be my professional goal, is to make myself redundant.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm curious. So what do you do when someone comes to you and has, this is going to be very broad, but so many layers to their onion of problems where, it's like, where do you begin? Almost, you look at them and you go, oh my gosh, no wonder they're sick. Like, look at they've had trauma. They've exposures, the food they're eating, the toxins, like attacked by, say a horrific case of Epstein-Barr virus when they were a kid, and now they have, all these other things. How do you start to pull away all the toxic things that they're doing, have done, been exposed to, are in their life, to get, it's got to be layer by layer.
Yeah.
So how do you look at
people write to me, every day from all over the world, what's the remedy for this? What's the cure for this? What have you? And the answer is always the same: knowledge. And so it's always got to start by taking a case history, which is not quite how, modern doctors would do it by a long shot. It starts from when they were, mother pregnant with them and all the way through. And what we're looking for is, because the truth is, and we have to get back to this, the body doesn't know how to work against you. And I know that will sound extraordinary to anyone who's been sick or had someone or sick, but it doesn't. It's if you're a complete dumbass right now and you cut your arm, it's immediately starts to try and fix it. Now, I'm not saying intervention isn't necessarily advantageous, but the fact is the body immediately starts to try and do it. It's programmed that way. If you take in something that is toxic, other than something that's completely lethal, the body will immediately try and reject it, vomit it, or eject it, or break it down and lessen it. And if it can't, it will try and dump it and store it until it is. Smoking's a perfect example of that. If you were to inject the nicotine of one cigarette directly into a vein, you drop dead. But clearly people, it takes many years in some cases. But the body is taking those poisons out the blood and dumping them into cells, very often fat cells, waiting for that cigarette to stop. And then once it's stopped, it starts to leak it back into the blood. And that's when you feel uncomfortable. And that's what the cigarette tobacco marketing industry have, worked on to get you to light the next cigarette. Because when you light the next cigarette, the whole process reverses and it goes back to dumping. You feel better. So to answer your question, hopefully, we start with a case history. We put together logically all those things that have happened in their life that then caused the body to try and do something, which is normally when they go to the doctor and gets labeled or not, or medication. Was it medication? Did it resolve it, or did it actually push it deeper and make it worse? And when you take case histories, as I do, you're usually able to show them that this happened and then you did this and that actually pushed it deeper, and it went all the way along until you got into this very serious disease. And they have their aha moments. And it's very simple, not scary words that most people can't spell, let alone, explain. So once you give it back, they have their, oh my God. Like I had an author, quite a famous author in one of the Caribbean islands. And one of his problems, to his shame, were these terrible bouts of, is it called red mist, I think, of anger. And he'd behaved very badly occasionally. And he'd been to top Chinese doctors in China and all kinds of things. And I said to him, has anyone asked you what's in your mouth? And he said, no. and he had a load of amalgam fillings, which, as you probably know, are mercury based. And since the 60s, they put more copper, which made them even more reactive. Now, dentists will go, they don't leak. They all leak vapor. And he was in the Caribbean where it's hot. So, metal expands when it's hotter and it's more reactive. And then he would go running. It would always happen after he was running. And so I explained to him that go and look it up. One of the side issues of mercury vapor being ingested or mercury toxicity is this dark, he described this depression as this dark cloud moving in on him, and then this rage. So we got him to, cut a long story short, he got to a very good dentist who understood how to remove these things. He removed these amalgam mercury fillings. He's never had a dark depression or a red mist moment ever since. Right? So you start them at what resonates, and then you introduce them to a protocol, and they transition, and you explain to them that the body's going to choose how it wants to do it. Some people, they get their skin wants to come out the skin. Some people, it come out their bottom and they get the upset stomach. Some people, so we start to see how the body's going to react, and we work with it and sometimes get out of the way of it, and then at some level, the trauma comes up usually, and so it's layers. And as you work through, and sometimes it's a year with people, sometimes it's 3 months, sometimes it's 6 months on average for chronic serious things, 12 months normally serious, right? But as you work through it, they start to see these cycles of cleanse, heal, cleanse, heal, cleanse, heal, right? And then they start to actually welcome them, like, bring it on. Give me a big flu, bitch. Bring it on, right? And yes, there sometimes needs to be some help, even from allopathic to, it's too much dumping for something. So then it's a skill. It's an art. It used to be called the art of medicine, right? But usually, mostly, people get through it and come out the other end, totally different. I had a woman call me. She actually came to the live conference I've just finished. I'm so exhausted from, but 6 weeks ago, she'd heard about me. She'd just come out of being in hospital for 2 weeks. She was yellow. With a gallstone, and they said, if you don't have your gallbladder out on Thursday, you will die. And she was a single mother with a child of 9. And I took a case history, and for me, Chinese medicine, the gallbladder and liver is anger, and she certainly had a lot of resentment. Gallstones are held on resentment. Yes, also she'd eaten the Western diet of grains and sugar, and she was metabolic syndrome, high insulin, these sort of inflammatory things, all in the picture. But by the time we done the case history, she was like, oh my God, that makes sense, right? And so she started the protocol. In her case, she's carrying a lot of weight, so I prefer those ones. I put her on 1 meal a day, high-fat carnivore diet, which might be controversial to someone listening. Of course, the doctors have said no fat, high grains, high carbs. And she came to the conference over the weekend. She's lost 2 stone. She's never felt better. And her friends and family are starting to ask her whether she was lying 6 weeks ago.
Did she have the gallbladder surgery or not?
No.
So she was actually jaundiced from biliary obstruction.
That's right. And now she's lost 2 stone. She looks perfect. Now we're still going to be working 6 months together, right? But she's never felt better in her life. We're only 6 weeks in.
So what's 2 stone, like 55 pounds?
14 pounds a stone, so 28 pounds.
28 pounds.
6 weeks. It's not bad, eh?
Yeah.
But I told her after consultation, go and tell your son, who was in trauma because he thought she was going to lose money, you're going to be fine. So I met her son 2 days ago, and he gave me a hug.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It never ceases to amaze me how probably the single most powerful intervention against the diseases of the 21st century are ketogenic diets. We've interviewed Sean Baker, and we've had one of the most fascinating was the ketogenic therapist, where she uses ketosis as a therapy aid for profoundly mentally ill people like schizophrenics. And she said, every single person improves.
Most mental illness will go away. Then, of course, as traumas come up. But, the true ketogenic diet, because most people aren't doing it properly.
No.
They're using seed oils. There's no such thing as vegetable oils. But the true ketogenic diet was designed to stop epileptic fits.
Yes.
And very successful it is, because it's, fat, cholesterol is what your brain's made of.
There you go.
I have a question. Going down
Sorry,
the realm of, were you going to say something, John?
Oh no, I was just going to, this whole topic of, the ketogenic and, gets into carnivore. That's one of the, I was kind of excited, prepping for this. I like the idea of the lightning round, that you did. This touches on one of those points, but like I've used the analogy of a house cat, and okay, so I think most people know that like average lifespan of a cat is anywhere from 10 to 12 years ish. That's your average cat. Okay, we've had all of our animals, and a big dog person have had cats as well, but I've yet to have an animal that hasn't hit 20. In fact, the last cat that we had made it past 24 years old. And the reason why our animals live so long is because they eat meat. I try very, very hard to give my animals the most natural existence. And so they don't eat grains. And so like I've got this kind of this will become an essay that I'll get done one of these days, but it's the idea is, are you a house cat, and how many humans live like this? So I'm going to use the analogy of a house cat. Okay, so you've got your average house cat never sees, first of all, never eats actual meat. They're eating most likely a grain-based diet, so, and a cat in its natural setting would never eat corn. I mean, a cat's never going to walk by a corn stalk and start eating corn. So you've got cats that have never eaten meat. They've never sat in natural sunlight because they're inside. And so the only light that they're getting is coming in through windows, which have UV coating, which take out all the healthy UV rays. So they're not getting natural food. They're not getting natural light. They're probably drinking tap water. So they're not getting natural living water. And here, the most important thing is they're never touching the ground. Ever. And those little pads on the bottom of a cat or a dog's feet, those aren't there for decorative reasons. Those are connection points. And all mammals are collecting charge at all times, and you have to discharge. You have to. It's why anyone that's ever stepped on a beach and put their feet in the water, you can feel it instantly, just discharge. And so how many humans live like that house cat example that I just said, that have they never touch the ground, they rarely, if ever, get actual sunlight, they're not drinking natural water, and they're not eating natural food, they're eating feed. And a lot of humans live like that. And that is why, your cats that live that way, dogs that live that way, you're only going to get 10, 12 years out of them. But if you let them touch the ground, give them natural water, give them natural light, give them meat, you're going to get literally twice the lifespan out of an animal. And if it's relevant to cats and dogs, it's certainly relevant to humans. And I see it in my peers. I'm 58 here this November. I'll be 59 years old. And I just went to this past November, I went to my 40th high school reunion. And I don't mean to be catty, but like I looked around, and there was probably 150 people in the room that, my classmates and all. I was about the size of my class. And I bet you there was maybe a half dozen of us max that sort of retained their natural shape. I mean, 95% of the people that I went to school with were round and gray. And one of them was walking with a walker, and it wasn't because of it wasn't because of a condition. It was, just too many Dunkin' Donuts, honestly, is what it was. And I don't mean that sound heartless, my heart goes out to these people, but there is a,
well, we support that they have the right to remain stupid, right? But you cannot deny the information is freely out there now.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, meat, good meat, good water, good sunlight, and touch the ground as often as possible. You'd be surprised at what those things right there, those very simple, natural things that don't cost money, will do to just kind of get your entire situation turned around.
Well, yeah, that's like just that. I could not agree more. Just those things. Yet here we live in this world where I'm listening to a Canadian Football League game because we're originally from Canada, and so Sun Safe Saskatchewan. Okay, so Saskatchewan, where the sun shines for 25 minutes a year. They literally have a website, and it's produced by their dermatologic association that, quote, there's no such thing as a healthy tan. And I'm like, we're freaking solar powered. Human beings for the last 19 bajillion years have been living outside in the sun. And when the sun goes down, they go to bed. When the sun comes up, they get up and they go outside. But somehow by magic, we're all going to die of squamous cell cancer. Like, give me a freaking break.
Well, are you guys familiar with the concept of inversion? You know, up is down, right is left,
Yes,
black,
yes.
right.
Like the Patriot Act, like the Affordable Care Act, they're all upside down.
Now,
The World Health Organization.
Yeah.
Yes, Department of Education. Anyways, I'm not religious. I think religion is man-made clubs. Okay, I'm not religious, but I am very spiritual. But I will say that the I'm so sorry. I got a alarm going off here. No, lost my train of thought there. Sorry about that. But
You were saying you're not religious but very spiritual.
Right. And I don't know where I was going with that, so I'm gonna punt. Sorry about that. Brain
Okay.
had an alarm going off. I thought it my wife is handicapped, and so whenever my alarm goes off, it might be her calling for me. So
I think the key. I think whether you want to edit this out or not, but it's real conversation that happens in interviews. But I think the main thing is that we do fight for your right to be stupid, but it's impossible now to claim that there isn't information freely available that you could discover the error of your ways. And most what I call true doctors or true practitioners I hope will agree that usually one of the most significant things we're doing is taking things away, not putting them in. You know, if you want to heal a very, very sick human being with a little bit of knowledge, fasting is without shadow of a doubt one of the greatest tools given by God, or the man upstairs, I call him. You know, and what's that going to cost you? You know, but usually, I mean, I have the carnivores coming to me and the vegans. You know, if it was just if carnivore fixed everything, and it certainly fixes a lot, because we seem to be the only animal on this planet that doesn't know what the hell to eat. But if it fixed everything, you know, we'd just say eat meat and fat and go away and give us a testimonial in 6 months, 9 months, whatever it is. But it's more complex than that. But certainly we have, this is why, you know, we contributed to the Red Pill Revolution book. You know, we have been educated in every way possible to not behave, live, or eat as we were designed. And the labeled diseases, for the greater part, are not found in nature. It's only when you start, you know, taking animals, and we're a mammal, out of nature and out of the way they were designed, do they start getting sick and getting labels and diagnoses and treatment plans. And, you know, the sun, as you know, everybody craves the sun.
Right.
And Jeremy, that's where I was going with the it was inversion before I had my brain fart. Yeah. Okay. It's like I was saying, I'm not a religious man, but I am a spiritual man, and call it what you want. Call it Satan, call it Lucifer, call it darkness, call it Justin Bieber, whatever your name is for darkness. Darkness, those that practice the dark arts or the dark ways, inversion is a very real tool that they use. And to get people to think that up is down, to get people to think that right is left, get people to think that boy is girl. Sound familiar? Yeah. Inversion is a tool that they use. And it doesn't matter if some of you out there don't believe that, they believe that. And it doesn't matter if you believe it, they believe it. And I think one of the biggest victories for them in the art of inversion is getting people to be afraid of the sun. They've literally taught us to be afraid of the very thing that gives life to literally all life.
That is
absolutely right.
That is exactly correct. I mean, it's fascinating to me. I have this very good group of friends, and they are just absolute saints. And I meet them every year and go kiteboarding with them in Cape Hatteras, and they're from various places in Canada. So I've lived in Florida now for about 10 months, and I swear I have used. I think they used more sunscreen in 2 hours than I have used in the last year. And the only time I put sunscreen on is I put zinc-based sunscreen on when I go in the water, because that's a one-way ticket to, a swollen second-degree burn. I don't want a second-degree burn on my face. Yeah. But I'm like, I'm tanned everywhere. And they take their shirts off, and it's like you have to put sunglasses on because they're so white. And I'm like, guys, what are you doing, man? Like, get out in the sun. It's really good for you.
You have the right to remain stupid.
Yeah.
But the body will tell you, and that's what I believe all this disease is. It's if you've been ignoring the wisdom or the way we're designed, it will throw up something, and you have two opportunities: go and get it treated, or go and find out what caused it and change.
Man, there's so much we could go into.
This is a lot of fun. We got to have you on one of our Cocktails with Cocktail shows where we really mock the hell out of. I saw you had a thing on your website. I saw you had a thing on your website about the Olympic GAYMES, and we did a whole episode that actually dropped on yesterday about the Olympics. So whatever, we'll talk about that later.
I have to throw this in there because it's a little, personal. I don't know, get some questions answered. But I know a lot of people, myself included, fear sometimes some of the healing remedies more than living with the disease. I mean, and you get this. It's like, if you're obese or you're what, it's like, well, I know the body I'm living in, the pain that hurts. I'm afraid to change because I can't even imagine what it'd be like to be a thin person. And there's a lot of psychology that goes in that. But where I'm going is, like you said, sometimes you start down these roads of healing, taking things away or doing treatments to get rid of things and get better. And there's sometimes the purging of things and getting worse before you get better. So where I'm going with this is the whole amalgam thing, because there's a lot of controversy back and forth amongst obviously dentists and Western medicine practitioners. And I think people in general. And so, myself, I think it was a total scam back in the day. My father worked for this Canadian mining company with great insurance, and the dentist we had, I think it was just like, oh, I can get rich quick by telling all these young kids that they have cavities, because I never remembered once having a tooth that hurt. But by the time I was graduating,
like, why would you treat something that doesn't hurt?
Anyway, by the time I graduated,
they did it in England. I had a dentist that I thought he was drilling for oil.
Yes. So by the time I was graduating high school and I was 17, I think I had all my molars and premolars filled with amalgams. All right. So then I start to look at my health, as you're talking about, and some of the things that ensued after that. There's a lot of factors. I won't necessarily blame the amalgams, but I still have them. I've had some crowns, etc. And I've had a lot of people now, even Western medicine friends, that have gone down the naturopathic healing routes, and colleagues and other people I've met who are taking theirs out and that really stand by it, but also running into complications as well, as because now you have these teeth that have been filled with this. So now you can't just necessarily drill out the amalgams. You have to take out all the tooth because it's going to crumble. So what do you say to people like, I'm even thinking, is it worth doing this because I'm going to run into more problems pulling all my teeth, risking the fact that I can't just take the amalgams out. Some of these teeth are brittle. I'm going to need posts and to replace them, etc.
Isn't it interesting, Jeremy, before you answer that, because the dental industry holds a special place in my heart, and not in a good way either. Isn't it interesting that industry on a whole has a colorful history of putting very toxic things into our mouths? I think if anybody wants an interesting rabbit hole to go down, go start researching the relationship between the dental industry and the aluminum industry, and what happened in the mid to late 40s, when the aluminum industry got busted for dumping this toxic runoff that they had from making their product that was called hydrofluoric silicic acid, aka fluoride, and they were just dumping it. Yeah, they were just dumping it and causing all sorts of health problems with ground
fish were dying.
Yeah. And so they I think the dental industry, if more people understood the relationship between the dental industry and the aluminum industry, and how the aluminum industry partnered with the dental industry, and they no longer dump their toxic waste into the ground, it's now dumped into groundwaters in municipalities throughout the world. So the dental industry is suspect across the board for lots of things. But anyways, I didn't mean to hijack your answer, Jeremy, because I know you got lots to say about the amalgam. So,
well, I have, but bearing in mind, I've now been named the Yoda of natural medicine. It knowledge you need. A bad Yoda impression there, but put it this way. A lot of people, and that's why again we did the membership and I do one-to-ones, because there is a process of education, foundational education, that is needed, because so many people have gotten into trouble by watching YouTube videos and what have you. And there's a lot of great stuff out there, but without the philosophy. And so things start to happen and they misunderstand what's going on and they do the wrong things. And so there's a lot of good intention people out there trying to help, a lot of good intention practitioners, but they haven't got enough philosophy in my view. And so they get into trouble. And then, perhaps they get into some serious trouble. So, but we have to stay with some facts here. The American Dental Association to this day makes the statement that mercury is a highly toxic, I think it's the second in the world, but a highly toxic and poisonous material. But when you make it into amalgam and put it in a tooth, it's safe. Yeah, I'm glad you're smiling, right? That's obviously nonsense, right? And look, we all know metals react to heat and cold, so they're not stable. Fact, right? Next thing, we know that over time, bone and things change, so they're starting to leak and leach. So they are leaching, and I know they're off-gassing. It's been, when you brush your teeth, it's been shown they're off-gassing. My wife, when I met her, had been submitted to all the horrors of modern oncology with breast cancer and was still labeled terminal, even though she'd done a lot of changes. But when I did her case history, which is how I met her, the only time I've been unprofessional, because a week after taking a case history, I had to write to her and say that I'm not sleeping, expecting her to be very disappointed and reject me. But fortunately, she felt the same. 14 years on, we're still together. But anyway,
she had breast cancer.
Yeah, she had been using. She had amalgam fillings, and she had been using underarm deodorant for 30, 40 years. And where do you think that goes? I mean, you wouldn't put it in your mouth, right? It goes into the breast, right? And several other things. She'd been drinking Diet Coke because at least she'd learned the sugar was not good, but aspartame is awful poison, and on we go. So when you go back to the fundamentals, you're not sick, you're toxic. You look at the case history where toxicities come into. Look, I had a little girl. I treat a lot of people in the Mexican community because I treated one person in Chicago, and it's led to a lot of wonderful Mexicans. And he brought his daughter, well, virtually by Zoom, right, on, and she had these terrible lung coughing, wouldn't clear up. Just, they'd gone into medicine, they'd done all these scans and all these potential diagnoses, and it was getting very scary. And it's gone on for, I think, 18 weeks. And then he came to me and took a case history, and I cut a long story short, two things. The wife had introduced fabric softener into the laundry, and so it was all up. When he told me the cough was worst in the morning, so it suggests that something's happening during night, and it's the fabric softener and the chemicals, and it gets warmer, and she's breathing in, and it goes through the skin. Number two, they'd introduce plug-in, and I always laugh at this next word, plug-in air fresheners.
Oh.
Air fresheners, my ass. So I said, take them and throw them away, open the windows and go and wash her linen and all her clothes in hot water and bicarbonate soda. The girl cleared up in 1 week.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but
we always got to get to what what can we establish is possibly toxic, remove it, start putting in protocols that we're like the sun and fresh air and movement and the right food that would, and see what the body starts to do.
Right. But to your, I guess back to my question, taking, and I remember we had those stupid plugins in our house and all that stuff too. We've long since got rid of them, but that is an easy thing without harm to do. I mean, personally, going in and drilling out all these amalgams from my mouth, I'm like,
yes.
Is it going to? It's a risk benefit. Is it? I don't know. I'm not. If I was 100%, if I was 100% certain it was going to improve the problem, well, that would be
it's
a win. But there's no
that,
guarantee, right?
That actually happened to my wife early on. She got all of her amalgams taken out, but she didn't know at the time. She knew that they were bad and that they shouldn't have been in there, but she did not have the knowledge that there is a way that they have to be removed. And there's a certain,
right.
Yeah. And so she did not have a biodentist remove them. So the removal of them caused even more problems.
Yeah, that happens. Yes. It's context. So if you were to speak with Hal Huggins, the great Hal Huggins, who did many root canals and amalgam fillings, retired, and then someone challenged him and he aggressively argued back, and then something went off in his head that he was right, and then he reviewed it and he spent the rest of his life trying to correct it. But if you're speaking to Hal Huggins, he would say something like this, which is how Harry Hawes used to speak. You only, it's no problem keeping your amalgam fillings as long as you want to stay sick. So he would speak like that, right? However, I'm a man of context, and I agree with Hal Huggins and I agree with Harry Hawes. But if you are not showing some very serious labeled quote unquote autoimmune or something, not that I think autoimmunes exist in the way that they've been described, it's the body attacking some foreign material. But nonetheless, if you haven't got something like that, you certainly should be considering taking zeolite or other saunas to help the body continually remove heavy metals. But if you do have a labeled dis-ease, then we should definitely be looking for the right dentist and the right protocols to remove this. I have seen a healthy tennis player develop leukemia straight after a root canal. And I have seen someone with leukemia have a root canal removed and the leukemia went away. None of those weren't my clients, but I've seen it. And I've seen amalgam fillings do all kinds of damage and be reversed when they're taken out. And I've had also people that have kept them in. Right, and you understand it's context.
Yes.
However, I think we can all agree we shouldn't have ever got to fillings. Go and look at Weston's price research and Pottinger's. We should never have got to fillings. But since we got to fillings, if we didn't have dentists, we'd have a lot of suicides. So if we're going to have dentistry, we must do the least trauma and then re-educate them back to preventing fillings and dental health going forward. So you have to loop back to go forward.
No, perfectly said. Perfectly said.
No, this is great. Well, I don't know. Tattoos are probably toxic too, but whatever.
Yes, I didn't want to say anything. This is me exhausted.
Exactly. Well, we should wrap this up so you can go take a giant nap. I know John is probably chomping at the bit to do some rapid fire questions really quick, so maybe you can tackle a couple of these if just for fun, just really quick.
Let's keep it rapid if we can, because also my bladder is full. But yeah,
all right, how about just really quick, one book that you think everyone should read on natural health?
I'm actually going to do 3 real fast. First of all, The Moth and the Iron Lung. This is the history of what we call polio and how they took a situation and created the problem and the solution. So Moth and the Iron Lung, and you will understand what they did to create the situation known as polio. Severe adverse events. They did the exact same thing with AIDS. In fact, you'll recognize many of these names because they were part of the COVID-19 scamdemic cast of characters. And finally, my favorite, Virus Mania, which is, I know there was lots of talk about what is a virus? Have we ever even seen a virus? Has anyone ever isolated a virus? This is exhaustive research. And I think if you read those 3 books, you will not be able to look the medical industrial complex in the face and take it seriously, because you will see how people very purposely created situations, gave things names, created these disease scenarios, and in most cases it was for profit and control.
Anything to add, Dr. Jeremy?
Yeah, and I think this is a great place to close. It's such a difficult question to answer, but I think that's why we did the membership. And I'm not at all shy of it sounding like a sales pitch, because it's the best stuff I've ever produced, and there's book lists in there. But if you want to push me, so come join the membership, and if you don't like it, binge watch everything, get your money back, and put a middle finger up to me. But if you want a couple of books, Moon Time by Joanna Pope, Poppe. That's the 400 European wisdom of the moon and how the farmers used it. It's still, the almanac still does use it. Mm-hmm. It's that gives you a greater perspective of our ancient wisdom. But, one book after that in the more 3D modern matrix would be The Big Fat Lie. I like to cull sacred cows, and we've got to come to realize that Ancel Keys was one of the greatest criminals of our time, where he did the Flexner report. It's not the Flexner report, sorry, the lipid hypothesis, and then which demonized fat and cholesterol and labeled it as the cause of heart disease, when actually cholesterol is more like the fireman coming to a house fire. And he then went off, Ancel Keys, and lived in the Mediterranean to over 100, eating an almost carnivore diet of high fat. We've got to start, chipping away at a major scale these lies, corporate lies that were designed to make people sick and sell drugs.
What's fascinating, you mentioned Flexner a couple of times, and Flexner is really the kind of father of this whole quote scientific medicine. But why did Flexner get famous? He got famous because he was working on the first major pandemic from 1918. Yeah, in Johns Hopkins. So Flexner,
which wasn't caused by a Spanish flu, but that's another conversation.
If you guys want to come back, I want to talk about. I'm sure you want to go down this rabbit hole. Aspirin overdose in 1918, because that is a complete mind blower. But
94% of all the deaths were pneumonia, and using aspirin, which suppressed the body's ability to detoxify, the max vaccination program that they instituted after the World War I ended too soon.
Yeah, no, it's just amazing that Flexner came out of this same thing 100 years ago, and nobody even knows his name.
Anyone would think it was planned.
Yeah. Well, in the interest of Dr. Jeremy's bladder and more,
thank you.
I'm gonna wrap this up, and we'll have the links on there, and have everyone go to naturallybetterforyou.com, and you can check everything out and sign up, like you said, and more. So thank you again. We will let you go. This was wonderful having you both on.
We'd love to have you guys back. Like, again, I don't know exactly how much I agree and disagree, but I love these conversations because I love the challenge in thinking differently. We have to be able to think differently.
And it doesn't. The goal isn't to get you to disagree or agree. The goal is to converse and to have these, like you say, have these conversations.
100%.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's no secret that medicine is a bit uptight. That's why Tim and I created BS Free MD, to mix things up a little and have fun in the process. Besides, we are having these exact same discussions all the time, so we thought we might as well invite everyone to the party. If you really like us, you can get plenty more, and maybe see one of Tim's cool tattoos on our Instagram or Facebook pages at BS Free MD. See you next time.
While we try to keep BS Free MD as raw and real as possible, we can't be held responsible for any medical decisions or discussions had as a result of what you've heard on the show. We know, bummer. But the truth is, we really do care about your questions. So feel free to reach out to us by email at doc@bsfreemd.com.